Hello, this is Kay from essentialkorean.com. 안녕하세요, 여러분. Essential Korean K-쌤입니다. Before we get started, I want to announce that I plan to hold a free live class for our listeners. Think of this as a virtual class where you can ask any questions about the previous lessons or just about the Korean language in general. We'll be posting the details on our website soon, so please check it out. Or you can sign up for our newsletter and we'll send you the schedule directly. Okay, now on to the episode. Over the next 2 episodes, I'll talk about 2 of the most fascinating topics of the Korean language: speech styles and speech levels. I truly think these are fascinating topics, but I also empathize completely with those who find the topics too elusive to get a good grasp on. So I'll tackle them one at a time, with today's episode focusing on speech styles and how they are used. Are you ready now? Let's roll. Speech styles in Korean. Speech styles refer to the degree of formality of speech and are expressed by changing the end of a verb from its dictionary form. The speaker determines the speech style based on the kind of relationship that exists between the speaker and the listener, and or the situational setting in which the conversation takes place. There are quite a few speech styles, but I'll focus on the 2 speech styles used in colloquial speech: polite and casual speech style. By the way, the casual speech style is also known as intimate speech style. If you've heard the term john-deht-mahl and bahn-mahl in Korean, they are referring to the topic of speech styles. john-deht-mahl being the polite styles, and bahn-mahl being casual or intimate style. All the phrases introduced in Essential Korean podcast episodes are in the polite speech style. This speech style keeps a certain degree of distance between the speaker and the listener. If you've been following Essential Korean podcast episodes, you must have noticed that most phrases we've learned end with yo. That is what we call the informal polite style. 안녕하세요. 누구예요? 어디예요? 언제예요? 모르겠어요. 알겠어요. Are just a few examples we've learned that we now know are in informal polite style. As the term suggests, this speech style is polite enough that you can use it with strangers, yet does not sound too formal or rigid. The formal polite style, on the other hand, is both polite and formal, more so than informal polite, which ends in yo. This is why people adopt the formal polite speech style in business settings or other social settings that call for formality. I'll discuss more details about formal polite style at some point in future. For now, just remember 2 things. 1, questions in the formal polite style will end with 니까, and statements with 니다 in the formal style. 안녕하십니까? Listen again for the 니까. 안녕하십니까, which corresponds to how are you, is an example of a question in the formal polite speech style. And 알겠습니다, 감사합니다, 고맙습니다. Listen again for the 니다. 알겠습니다, 감사합니다, 고맙습니다 are a few examples of statements in the formal polite speech style. A few words about the casual style, bahn-mahl. When used appropriately, it creates a close relational atmosphere. It's often used between friends and siblings, and depending on the kind of relationship, also between parents and children. For example, I use polite style with my father and use bahn-mahl with my mother. I started using the polite style with my father at an early age when one day my mother ordered me and my brothers to use the polite style with my dad to show the respect that the head of the family deserves. She never asked me and my brothers to use 존댓말 to her though. In my own case, my son and I have always used bahn-mahl to each other. I, as a parent, made the choice of not asking him to use 존댓말 to me because I wanted the casual speech style to help create a more close and informal relationship so he can communicate with me more openly. This is one example that reflects the fluid nature of adopting a speech style and how it would differ depending on one's belief system and even individual personality. Linguistically, 요 is absent in bahn-mahl. So the bahn-mahl form of, say, 있어요 is 있어, 없어요, 없어, 그래요, 그래, and so on. However, that is not to say that we can take away the 요 at the end of phrases in the polite style and always turn them into the casual speech style or bahn-mahl. Forming bahn-mahl is a little more complicated than that. Think of the phrase 안녕하세요. You cannot make bahn-mahl out of this by simply dropping the 요 from it. Also, one has to be careful about switching to the casual style because it can make the speaker sound rude or impudent when the other party in the conversation does not perceive the nature of the relationship in the same light or with the same level of interpersonal proximity. If these rules seem confusing, please don't worry. I'll cover this in detail with far more examples in due time. So I'll ask you to be patient. If you are a K-drama fan, you might run into a scene where people quarrel over the speech style one uses because the other party interprets it as an act of rudeness. You might also often run into a scene where people explicitly talk it out and mutually agree to switch from polite style to casual style, 존댓말 to bahn-mahl, because they want to have a closer relationship. In a recent episode of a popular drama I watched, one of the female characters cried her heart out over the fact that the guy who she's been in love with for a long time continues to speak to her in the polite speech style. She witnesses him using bahn-mahl to another girl who also likes the same guy and therefore is now her love interest rival, even though he has just recently met her. This is a good example of how one's choice of speech style can result in both positive and negative outcomes, as well as adverse and favorable interpretations, depending on who uses it and how. Interesting, right? Well, the speech styles and speech levels, which are discussed in the next episode, are difficult concepts to grasp for beginners, but this is one reason why at the beginning of the episode I said it is a fascinating aspect of the Korean language. I get really excited about talking about speech styles and speech levels in Korean. Please give yourself some time and you will slowly but surely get to see how they work in the language and the kind of roles they play in interpersonal relationships. Okay, I think that's it for today's episode on speech styles. I look forward to connecting with you again in the topic of speech levels in the next episode. Until then, be well everybody. 고맙습니다. 안녕히 계세요.